Glasgow, 1968, a city alive with music, laughter, and the glow of neon lights along the River Clyde. Amid the bustling streets and vibrant nightlife, a chilling pattern was about to emerge that would haunt the city for years to come. Three young women, Patricia, Gemma, and Helen, each set out for an evening of dancing and fun at the famous Barrowland Ballroom, unaware that their lives would be cut tragically short. Patricia, a 25-year-old nurse and devoted mother, left her young son in the care of her parents, hoping for a night of music and escape from her daily responsibilities. Months later, Gemma, a 32-year-old mother of three, sought a similar night of joy, leaving her children with family for a brief respite. And then came Helen, just 20 years old, stepping into the same dance hall for a night of fun with her sister. Each of these evenings ended in horror. All three women were strangled with their own nylons, their handbags taken, and a grim similarity tied their fates together. What made these crimes even more unsettling was the precision and consistency in the killer's actions. Authorities struggled to identify a suspect, piecing together witness accounts, sketches, and fragmented evidence. But the city's fear only grew. A man, later dubbed Bible John by the media for his habit of quoting scripture, became the focal point of the investigation, his shadow looming over Glasgow's dance halls. Tonight, we dive deep into this chilling case, exploring the lives of the victims, the painstaking investigation, and the enduring mystery that surrounds Bible John. Join us as we retrace the steps of those fateful nights and uncover the story that shook a city to its core. If you want to uncover more dark mysteries and true crime stories, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. As Glasgow's nightlife continued to pulse with energy in the late 1960s, a shadow quietly began to weave itself into the city's vibrant tapestry, connecting the fates of three young women in a way that would chill the public for decades. Patricia, Gemma, and Helen had all stepped out for an evening of music, laughter, and carefree moments at the Barrowland Ballroom, each hoping for an escape from their daily routines. Yet, each night ended in a chilling repetition of violence that suggested not randomness, but deliberate design. Authorities soon noticed the striking similarities that linked these tragic events. All three women had been strangled with their own nylons. Each was menstruating at the time of her death, and in a particularly grim signature. Their handbags had been taken, possibly as a trophy. Even the locations where their bodies were discovered were unsettlingly close to their homes, turning familiar streets into sites of horror. These patterns, once fully understood, painted a portrait of a killer who operated with a strange and methodical precision. One who knew how to blend into the ordinary, who could walk among the dancing crowds without attracting notice, and yet leave a trail of terror behind him. The man who came to be known as Bible John had an unsettling presence, described as polite and articulate, yet carrying an undercurrent of something far darker, a fixation that intertwined morality, ritual, and obsession. Witnesses recalled his unusual habit of quoting scripture during brief encounters, a detail that seemed almost theatrical against the grim reality of his actions, and yet became his grim moniker in the press, forever linking him to these unsolved crimes. The killer's methodical approach revealed a disturbing understanding of the routines and vulnerabilities of his victims. By targeting women leaving the dance hall at night, he selected moments when they were likely to be alone or only accompanied by a sister or friend, aware of the paths they would take and the limited visibility of the streets. The consistency in his crimes suggested more than chance. It hinted at a meticulous mind capable of careful observation and calculated movement. Someone who could plan his encounters and retreat from the scene without leaving traces of his presence beyond the chilling aftermath. Over time, investigators recognized that these murders were connected not just by location or method, but by a series of ritualistic elements, acts that went beyond simple violence to suggest a compulsion, a dark pattern that bound the three women in a way that could not be ignored. As the city grappled with fear and uncertainty, the existence of Bible John transformed Glasgow's dance halls into spaces where enjoyment and danger coexisted in uneasy proximity. What had once been a night of music and camaraderie became an atmosphere tinged with tension. As the public internalized the threat and police worked tirelessly to understand the mind behind these murders, despite their best efforts, the killer's elusiveness, coupled with the limitations of forensic science at the time, left the city with more questions than answers. The trail of Bible John was marked by precision, ritual, and a terrifying familiarity, weaving a narrative of menace into the city's cultural heartbeat, leaving a chilling legacy that would linger long after the music stopped and the lights dimmed in Glasgow's nightlife. The investigation into the murders of Patricia, Gemma, and Helen quickly revealed itself to be a labyrinth of frustration, misdirection, and dead ends, as the Glasgow police faced challenges that went far beyond the crime scenes themselves. Each night the victims left the Barrowland Ballroom. They were ordinary women stepping into the vibrancy of the city, unaware of the predatory gaze that followed them. Yet when their bodies were discovered, the investigators were confronted not only with the brutality of the crimes but also with the elusiveness of the perpetrator, whose meticulousness left behind almost no tangible evidence to trace. Witnesses could recall glimpses of a tall man in a blue suit with fair hair and a mannered presence, but their accounts were fragmented and often contradictory, a murky reflection of fleeting encounters in a crowded ballroom filled with music, laughter, and dancing. The societal norms of the time further complicated matters, as many of the women who had attended Barrowland were married and often secretive about their outings, either to avoid disapproval from spouses or to maintain appearances within the community. This secrecy meant that investigators could not rely on straightforward testimonies or social networks to reconstruct the victims' movements, and leads that might have seemed promising were quickly exhausted. Moreover, key evidence, handbags, clothing, and other personal items had been taken by the killer, deliberately erasing any traces that might link him to the crimes, leaving police to piece together fragments of human memory and fleeting impressions that often dissolved upon closer scrutiny. In an attempt to mobilize the public, authorities launched extensive appeals, plastering newspapers with sketches of the suspect and descriptions painstakingly compiled from witness statements. The city streets were filled with posters, and photographs circulated widely, yet each tip seemed to spiral into another dead end, a combination of misidentifications, unreliable recollections, and the sheer volume of information overwhelmed the investigation, making it nearly impossible to separate fact from rumor. Even efforts to retrace the victims' steps with policewomen dressed similarly to Patricia, Gemma, and Helen yielded minimal insight, as the killer had left no tangible trace of his presence. The frustration of law enforcement grew with every inconclusive lead, the clock ticking as the city's collective unease expanded. Despite the obstacles, the investigation reflected both creativity and determination. The police enlisted artists to produce detailed sketches based on witness recollections, and members of the force went undercover in the dance halls, posing as dancers to observe patterns and identify potential suspects. They questioned taxi drivers, bus operators, and even enlisted psychics, exploring every avenue in a desperate attempt to illuminate the shadow that Bible John cast over Glasgow. Yet for all their effort, the case remained stubbornly opaque, the killer slipping through the cracks of the era's limited forensic capabilities, and leaving the city with a lingering fear that danced in parallel with the music and laughter that once filled the Barrowland Ballroom. In the end, the investigation was a testament to the challenges of pursuing a methodical, elusive criminal within a society constrained by its own norms and limited by the investigative tools of the time. It highlighted how the intersection of careful planning, societal secrecy, and fragmented memory could confound even the most determined authorities, turning what should have been a straightforward pursuit of justice into a decades-long puzzle that would captivate Glasgow and true crime enthusiasts for generations to come. Long before Patricia, Gemma, and Helen became names whispered with fear in Glasgow's neighborhoods, the city had already carved a reputation as a place where darkness and violence lurked just beneath its bustling streets, a metropolis whose industrial glow cast equally long shadows. Glasgow's history was punctuated by crimes that shocked its citizens and left investigators scrambling for answers, shaping not only the public's perception of safety, but also the very methods law enforcement would rely upon in later cases. One of the city's most infamous figures was Peter Manuel, a young man whose charm and cunning masked a trail of horrifying violence. Operating in the 1950s, Manuel had committed multiple murders across the city, targeting both the vulnerable and the unsuspecting. Yet he evaded capture time and again through meticulous manipulation of circumstances and clever exploitation of the weaknesses in investigative procedures. His audacity was such that, at one point, he even misled authorities into temporarily suspecting an innocent man, demonstrating a cold calculation that would haunt the city long after his eventual capture and execution. Equally chilling was the case of Dre, Edward William Pritchard, whose crimes in the 1860s revealed a more intimate, almost insidious form of murder. Unlike Manuel, Pritchard operated within the domestic sphere, taking advantage of the trust and care inherent in family relationships. His method was subtle but deadly, employing poison to strike those closest to him, first his wife, then her visiting mother, before finally facing justice in a public execution that cemented his infamy. These early cases, separated by decades and methods, nonetheless contributed to a collective consciousness in Glasgow that danger could be both overt and hidden, that it could walk among the citizens disguised in charm, respectability, or professional authority. By the time the murders at the Barrowland Ballroom began, Glasgow's residents carried with them a legacy of fear shaped by these previous horrors. The knowledge that someone could commit repeated acts of violence with impunity heightened anxiety, influencing how the public responded to news reports, shared eyewitness accounts, and cooperated with police investigations. Law enforcement, too, had learned hard lessons from Manuel and Pritchard: the need for thorough record-keeping, meticulous cross-checking of testimonies, and attention to the smallest inconsistencies. This historical backdrop provided both context and pressure, as detectives confronted the chilling pattern emerging around Bible John, aware that their city had once been paralyzed by elusive killers whose actions had left indelible marks on public memory. Moreover, the prominence of such cases in Glasgow's criminal history shaped the media's approach, as newspapers and radio reports framed the narrative in ways that amplified fear while attempting to convey information. Sketches, detailed reports, and public appeals became standard practice, reflecting lessons learned from previous failures and successes in capturing notorious criminals. The haunting presence of past killers loomed over every decision, from the allocation of manpower to the prioritization of forensic analysis, embedding a heightened sense of vigilance and urgency into every stage of the investigation. This historical context reveals that the story of Bible John did not occur in isolation, but was interwoven with decades of human drama, societal fear, and evolving investigative practices. The murders were not only a personal tragedy for the victims and their families, but also a collective trauma that drew upon the city's memory of past horrors, illustrating how Glasgow's dark history informed both the response to crime and the lingering unease that would grip its streets long after the dance halls fell silent. Decades after the terror of Bible John's killings had shaken Glasgow, the case had become both legend and enigma, a puzzle that seemed destined to remain unsolved. Among the many names that surfaced over the years, John emerged as a figure of particular interest, a man whose life and history bore certain unsettling resemblances to witness descriptions and police sketches of the elusive killer. His connection to the case was enough to draw intense scrutiny, fueled by decades of speculation, media attention, and the persistent hope that a breakthrough might finally provide answers to a city long haunted by unanswered questions. As forensic science evolved, what had once been a landscape of uncertainty and frustration began to offer new possibilities, and John M. became the focal point of this modern approach. Investigators hoped that advances in data testing could finally illuminate truths that had eluded previous generations, applying techniques that were unimaginable during the original inquiries in the late 1960s. The anticipation surrounding John M.'s potential link to the murders was immense, both for law enforcement and for the public, who had followed every development with a mixture of curiosity and dread. Police exhumed his body, carefully collecting samples under the supervision of forensic experts, aiming to match genetic material preserved from Helen's case, including a bite mark and biological traces on her clothing. The testing was thorough, conducted with the precision and care that only modern science could provide, offering the promise of a definitive answer where witness memory and circumstantial evidence had failed. Yet the results, when finally revealed, were unequivocal. John M. was innocent. DNA tests failed to match him to any of the biological evidence linked to the crime scenes, confirming that, despite the decades of suspicion and scrutiny, he had not been Bible John. This revelation was both a relief and a stark reminder of the limitations that had long constrained investigators. For John M.'s family, who had endured years of intrusive questioning and public speculation, the truth offered some vindication, though it could not erase the intense scrutiny they had endured over decades. For the police, it highlighted the critical importance of scientific rigor and the need to avoid drawing conclusions based solely on circumstantial evidence or physical resemblance to sketches. The exoneration of John M., while closing one chapter, opened another. If not, then who had orchestrated these calculated murders, and where could investigators look next? In the years that followed, renewed investigations in the 2000s applied modern DNA techniques to explore new leads, shifting focus to older male relatives of individuals connected to recent crime scenes. Genetic genealogy, familial testing, and a deeper understanding of biological inheritance offered a promising avenue to narrow the field of potential suspects. Combining the persistence of traditional detective work with cutting-edge science, police meticulously mapped out family trees, cross-referencing historical records and contemporary evidence to identify men whose DNA could provide the next breakthrough. Each sample collected, each analysis performed, was a step forward in the painstaking pursuit of justice, a testament to the enduring desire to close the chapter on one of Glasgow's most infamous unsolved cases. The story of John M. and the subsequent resurgence of the investigation underscores the evolving nature of criminal justice, where decades of uncertainty can be transformed by science. Yet the human element's memory, witness testimony, and societal context remain essential to understanding the full narrative. It illustrates that even after decades of frustration, persistence, innovation, and meticulous attention to detail can breathe a new life into cases once thought beyond resolution, keeping alive the hope that long elusive answers may one day bring closure to both investigators and the families of victims. As the decades have passed since the chilling events that shook Glasgow in the late 1960s, the murders committed by the man known as Bible John remain one of the city's most infamous unsolved cases, a haunting chapter in its criminal history that continues to capture the imagination of true crime enthusiasts and historians alike. Despite the passage of time, the story of Patricia, Gemma, and Helen serves as a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life, and the fragility of safety, even in places that feel familiar and secure. The Barrowland Ballroom, the site that linked all three women, has endured far beyond those tragic nights, evolving into a cultural landmark that stands as both a testament to Glasgow's vibrant social life and a silent witness to the city's darker past. Its music still echoes through the streets, a living reminder that while spaces can carry history, it is the events themselves and the lives affected that leave the most lasting impression. The unresolved nature of Ballroland's crimes also underscores the vital role of forensic science in modern criminal investigations. From the early reliance on eyewitness accounts and rudimentary sketches to the revolutionary use of DNA analysis and familial genetic testing decades later, the case highlights how advancements in science can provide tools to uncover truth, correct injustices, and offer hope for closure even after many years. The exoneration of long-suspected individuals like John M. demonstrates both the power of these technologies and the responsibility of investigators to approach cases with meticulous care, avoiding assumptions based solely on appearances or circumstantial evidence. At the same time, the story serves as a cautionary tale about the influence of media on public perception, illustrating how speculation and sensationalism can inadvertently impact the lives of innocent people and shape the narrative surrounding complex investigations. Persistence, too, emerges as a central theme in the legacy of Ballroland. Law enforcement, families, and the community all contributed in various ways to keeping the search alive, whether through tip lines, public appeals, or the painstaking review of evidence over decades. The ongoing effort to explore new leads using modern techniques reminds us that even in the face of immense challenges, dedication and innovation can keep hope alive. Each attempt to understand the killer, to trace patterns, and to apply emerging technologies represents a broader commitment to justice, one that transcends time and emphasizes that unsolved cases, while frustrating, are not forgotten. Ultimately, the tale of Ballroland is a story of tragedy, mystery, and the enduring human desire for answers. It reminds us of the importance of vigilance, scientific rigor, and ethical responsibility in both investigation and reporting, while also highlighting the resilience of a community that continues to live, work, and celebrate within the very spaces once touched by fear. As we reflect on this case, it is clear that the lessons extend far beyond the specifics of the crimes themselves, offering insight into human behavior, societal impact, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Thank you for joining us as we explored the haunting story of Ballroland, a case that continues to resonate through Glasgow's history. If you found this story compelling and want to follow more true crime investigations, historical mysteries, and in-depth storytelling, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing these intriguing stories to light.